Has emailed them.
Are they doing a strategic plan presentation?
Okay, I did want to speak, so.
It's about 35 minutes or so.
That's how long it'll take? I don't have to tell them to today.
Sure, Mark. I'm sorry, I won't ask.
No, I mean, I'm good.
Okay.
I just came from there, got her dinner, I'm like, I'll be back after the meeting.
Okay. I saw where you were, because you couldn't answer on Friday.
Yeah,
So my
they're telling me I gotta handle that. I'm like, I haven't handled it, but let me get to the funeral home. And then they're like, oh no, your brother has to be with you. I'm like, my brother doesn't want to. No. They're like, so then I had to take a form over and have my mom sign it and have him sign it. And I can make all the, it's just, it's
Yeah.
red tape, it's ridiculous.
He's crazy. He's
It's a comfortable car.
Yeah.
Great. Can you get a protection?
But she was like,
Yeah, you need to get one of those so that.
lunches and eating. I'm just saying. All right. If it's not one, it's the other.
Yeah. Can I just copy of OT and SCA? I want to play copy those.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. I keep my little book. My little book. But it's old. It makes it easy for me to find things like that.
Gotcha.
I need to
One
up. I
space.
need to update. I think the SCA can
No, it won't.
4 years old.
It should, double-sided.
No, it would, because I have.
Yeah, both of them. Put it to her today, because they're going to do the PowerPoint presentations for them to sit over and think.
I'd rather them be over there, because I'm going to go sit over there for this presentation.
Yeah, me too, so.
Do you want to move the podium when they speak?
Yeah, after they're.
When they're done.
Are they speaking on the agenda items or not agenda?
I'm assuming off.
So then we'll just move it down there. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. we can
Right,
move
you're
it.
gonna be on the moving.
Well,
Okay,
what
we
are we
ready?
gonna do with the wires?
So we got a second. Good to go? Are we up? Okay. Good evening and welcome to this August 23rd, 2021 Sylvania Board of Education meeting. Ms. Shanks, can you call the roll?
Julie Hoffman,
Here.
Ruslan Slutsky,
Here.
Greg Feller,
Here.
Kimberly Conklin.
Here.
Tammy Lavalette.
Here.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags that way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with that, we are with you, Dr. Motley.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to share that last week, everyone knows, was our first week of school here in the district, and we had a staggered start that was quite successful. I had an opportunity to visit a number of schools, but as everyone knows, everybody showed up today. It's the official first day of school for all students in Sylvania, and so that's always an exciting time of year. From the pictures on the outdoors at the front door and the new clothes and the backpacks and just seeing all your friends again, it's just a great time of the school year. I would like to share with our families that we do ask for your patience and cooperation and understanding as we refine our bus routes. Each and every day we have students that are enrolling and withdrawing, and quite frankly sometimes that causes a disruption. to a route that's already been finalized, then we have to make a modification or adjustment. So just remember to be a little patient with us. It should be a little more smooth in the next couple of weeks. I also want to share with our families, just as a gentle reminder, that it is a federal mandate that our students do wear masks on our school buses. That's a nationwide thing, not an Ohio thing, not a Sylvania thing, but a nationwide order. I also want to share, last week, it was a great but challenging opportunity for me to wake up about 4:30 in the morning and make sure I made it over to Southview and Northview to be on TV. I was both on Channel 11 and Channel 13 at 5:30 with our cheerleaders and our mascots. The Wildcats and Cougars were quite spirited and demonstrated their excitement about kicking off the school year. It feels good to start a school year this year under a traditional model. When I came last year, you may recall, we started the first 2 weeks off in a remote learning plan, so it was great to have our kids back in school. Albeit with some challenges, it's still a great thing to be in person 5 days a week, every day. Also on Thursday, I went to opening night to see the Northview High School musical of A Gentleman's Guide to Murder. I saw Ms. Hoffman there. It was absolutely amazing. I'm so surprised when I go to this high school show and it feels like you're downtown Cleveland. I haven't been to New York, but I've been downtown Cleveland for a play. And it's just amazing the talent we have with our students, how they sing and how they act, and students who are doing multiple characters. And this one, I have to tell you, was funny.
It was
had some
funny.
funny parts.
And
It
the
really
accents.
did.
The
The
accents
accents
were
were lovely.
incredible.
Like they have British accents, just all sorts of stuff. But honestly, it was just fantastic, a great time. I encourage our community, as we have more performances throughout the course of the school year, please take advantage. It's the best ticket in town. Also, I visited several schools last week. We have plexiglass in place in our cafeterias. I don't know if you can see it from the camera, folks, but we have plexiglass that are out and spread amongst tables, and they are spread for students during lunch periods. Again, especially for our elementary families, I want you to know, if you would like plexiglass for your child's desk in their classroom, you may contact your child's building principal. I also want to take a few minutes this evening, to give a update on our COVID status. I know it's on the minds of several of our parents, teachers, employees, and general community. And I want you to know and be reminded, we have 7,700 plus students in our district and 1,100 employees at any given time. Last Thursday, August 19th, we had 6 cases of students and staff members that were in isolation. And then we had 5 individuals that were in quarantine. As of today, August 23rd at 12:30, we took another pulse. We have 18 individuals in isolation. That includes 4 staff members and 14 students. In quarantine, we now have 58 individuals in quarantine, which is 57 students and 1 staff member. In other words, since Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, we have tripled the number of isolation cases, and by tenfold, we have increased the number of quarantines. It should be noted that in one point in time, we had 28 Northview students that were under a contact tracing protocol. Of the 28, only 14 had to be quarantined because they were vaccinated. So I want to emphasize, although I recognize it is a personal decision, I do want to emphasize to our families the value of having your child vaccinated. And if you are an adult in our region or in our school district, I strongly encourage you to get vaccinated. It makes a difference for our students, our absenteeism, for, more importantly, the continuity of instruction. You know, the Ohio quarantine guidelines actually states that they strongly recommend, and we echo this sentiment, we echo this with a megaphone, that masking for students in our buildings, especially if you're not vaccinated, but we would like to have all students and all families choose to mask. However, if we are universally masked, which means everybody, regardless of vaccination status, we are able to reduce the number of students who are quarantined. I say this to you, and I don't know, for those of you, the big circle. It's a big circle opportunity, and I know these graphics are not very sophisticated, but I think it's important to understand. that if we practice universal masking for all of our children, when we go to quarantine, those individuals that are within the blue circle, 3 feet, are quarantined if there is a COVID case. Under the conditions that we choose to operate now, where we are leaving masks optional, we are strongly recommending, again, echoing what all the medical professionals say, we are forced to do a 6-foot quarantine. That means students and individuals within a 6-foot radius of the positive case has to quarantine. That's double the number of students potentially, which makes increase in absences, loss of instruction. So I implore you, although we do not have a mask mandate right now, I implore you to really give thought and press pause and maybe perhaps reconsider your decision if you're not masking your child, because I'd much rather have us quarantining students based on this model opposed to this model. In addition, I want you to know that we know mask reduces the probability of quarantining. Masking will reduce absences. It will support the continuity of instruction. It will support the continuity of our athletic programs. I want you to know, on behalf of the board and our administrative team, I personally am working with our administrative staff to monitor our data each and every day, including over the weekend. If our numbers grow exponentially, which they have started to do, it is highly probable that we will implement a mask mandate for our students in order to reduce absences, reduce quarantining, and support keeping students in school, again, for the continuity of instruction. I want folks to know this is a difficult decision and we're not there yet. We are still at masks are highly recommended, but I think it's important that we are aware that we are monitoring our numbers and we're looking at our numbers in our Sylvania schools. We're not looking outside of Sylvania, not in Alabama, not in Florida, but in Sylvania schools where we want to protect our children and our families. We will continue to monitor the data. If there is a change, I will be in consultation with our school board to make that change, and we will report that change to our families in the future. However, right now we stand as optional as of this evening. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, with that, then it is time for the presentation on the strategic plan.
Thank you so much. Paul, Dave? I'm going to sit, I'm used to standing when I'm introducing someone. This evening I've asked Paul and Dave from the ESC of Northeast Ohio to come and give their initial presentation regarding the process of our strategic plan. If you've received my tweet, you know that we already had a meeting this afternoon with a few of our district administrators. Everyone is invited. In fact, in addition to our union leadership, they've already heard this presentation about an hour or so ago. So this is an opportunity for Paul and Dave to share with our board and those of you who are visiting here in person tonight to learn about our upcoming strategic plan process. So with that, Paul, Dave, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to present this process to the Board of Education. We think the purpose of a strategic plan has to be very clear to the Board of Education, administration, community, teachers. The purpose we see is to encourage community and staff ownership. Oftentimes, strategic plans are developed in a very nice booklet, and they sit on a superintendent's shelf, and it is of no value. We want to encourage the ownership of this process to the Board of Education and Administration. We'd like to create some civil conversations around educational issues, perhaps even community issues, that will guide and will inform the ultimate development of this plan. We want to create a commitment on the part of the Board of Education, Administration, teachers, and community to implement this plan, that it becomes a part of your daily routine as you think about and focus on values vision, mission, goals, strategies, and those things we'll be talking about tonight. We want to involve and engage as many people as possible in this process. Our model for that goes to North Royalton City Schools, southern suburb of Cleveland, which had about 800 people engaged in some way in the development of the strategic plan. Certainly this is meant also to help strengthen the relationship between the schools and communities. And finally, to develop and implement a comprehensive plan that touches all the needs, the hopes, wants, desires, and visions of this community. If you haven't noticed, the world around us is changing so rapidly, and especially in the past 18 months to 24 months, changes almost daily. The world is changing so rapidly, and if we don't assess where we are in this world, then we'll get left behind. For example, here's an ear growing on the back of a rabbit that will be extracted and placed on a human being. Who says chickens have to have feathers? If we remove the feathers, they can be butchered much more quickly. So some chickens no longer have feathers. By the way, here's your new computer. It's about this size, a little bit larger perhaps, that has two little legs. It sits like this, projects a screen and projects a keyboard. And you carry the computer around in your pocket. Available now. Dave's selling them, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd like to put strategic planning in a context. So a district doesn't just complete a strategic plan and everything's all well. A strategic plan is a part of a larger kind of process. For example, it's upside down. It says leadership. I have no idea why it's upside down. It wasn't an hour ago. One of the components of this process, of this system, if you will, is leadership. How is leadership chosen? How is leadership supported? How is leadership developed, both at this level, at the building level, at the classroom level, at the community level? How is leadership evaluated? And how are our resources provided to leadership? Another component of this system, which is not upside down, is student and stakeholder focus. If we were a business, we would call this customers. But we're not a business as such. So we need to make sure we always focus on the students and the stakeholders too. There are a lot of stakeholders in a school district. Certainly students, certainly parents, non-parents. The guy who delivers milk is a stakeholder as well as others. Another component of the system is the human relations focus. How are staff members, certified and classified staff members, identified? How are they supported? How are they given appropriate resources? A real focus on the HR part of the district. Another component is process management. How do things get done here? I use the example, Dave and I are both former superintendents. I use the example of I wouldn't think of going to the bus garage and telling the mechanics how to replace a split rim wheel. Now, I don't think they make them anymore because they're very, very dangerous. But I wouldn't think about doing that. I wouldn't think about going into the social studies department and trying to teach the teachers how to teach social studies. That's not my area. But there are processes that need to be developed. Transportation processes, food service processes, and the efficiency and the effectiveness of any organization revolves around how well the processes are identified and defined. And then planning fits into this system. not as an individual component, but a part of the wheel, if you will, part of the gears that turn when the entire system operates. The system is also encircled by two things that are very, very important. One is a set of core values or a set of beliefs around which the organization functions. What are those beliefs or values of Sylvania City Schools? I haven't seen them. Secondly, how do we collect and utilize data to make appropriate decisions? So if all of these things are working together, if there's a focus on leadership, a focus on students and staff, if there is a process, if we do this utilizing the values we have, if we do this utilizing data collection to make decisions, we will have a much greater opportunity to get the results we want. A systems approach. There's another way to look at it. I'm reading a book now called Netflix. It's the history of Netflix and how Netflix works and why they do what they do. The owner of Netflix, which name is escaping me for the moment, but had a previous business. And he said in this previous business that he put together rules and regulations for business operations. The business died. He later started Netflix. And he said, we need enough control over the organization to make sure it functions effectively and efficiently. But at the same time, we need enough flexibility in the organization to make sure we can meet the needs of customers. So, he said, if you need a vacation, take a vacation. You need a week off? You need a month off? You need 6 weeks off? You need 2 days off? Take it. You don't have to apply for it. You don't need approval. Just always keep in mind what is in the best interest of Netflix. So I was challenging your administrators an hour ago or so to think about the rules and regulations we have. And are there any rules and regulations in the organization that really hamper efficiency and effectiveness of operation? I suspect there is, but the goal is to get to something called a prime point. At that prime point, things are going really well for the organization. This might be the corner grocery store, the filling station, or a school district. Things are going pretty well. In fact, this happened at IBM. IBM said, things are going so well here. Tell you what, all upper-level administrators will wear suit and tie, presidential ties, and wingtip shoes. They almost killed IBM. Too many controls over the organization, not being able to meet the needs of their particular customers. So, at that point, the organization has to look at themselves and say, okay, let's refocus on what's really important to us, those core values. Let's refocus on where we want to be in a few years. Let's refocus on our mission. Let's refocus on data collection, needs analysis, setting goals, strategies, action plans, timeline. Let's refocus the organization. That may be where you are now. So, let's talk about the process. The process includes, very quickly, lead team, management team, focus groups, one-day retreat, action planning, state of the schools, and we're going to talk about each one of those individually. So let's first talk about the infrastructure. Lead team.
The lead team is the first group that we will set up and meet. It consists of about 10 to 15 people from the school community, from the external communities, and we're going to ask the superintendent to kind of put this lead team together, and we're looking for individuals that know the community, know the schools, know who the key communicators are, because we want everything communicated out. And you may have, for example, a ministerial group that's very strong in the community, so they would be one group. You might have business leaders, PTA, PTO groups, a number of groups that we're going to get 10 to 15 of those people that know the community, know who the key communicators are, know who knows the community. And we're going to invite those 15 people or 10 people to come together one night for a lead team meeting. And when they get together, we're going to ask them, what are the key stakeholder groups in the community? We want the name of the groups. So somebody may say, the Ministerial Association. So we'll put one of those sticky papers on the wall, and it'll say Ministerial Association, boosters groups, PTA, PTO groups. Any number, we may end up with 10 or 15 different papers around the room. And these are all the groups that represent the stakeholders in the community, Teachers Association, administrator, whatever they come up with. Then we're going to ask them, okay, now go around to each of those groups, and we want the name of 10 to 15 people who are really special in that particular group. People know them as being in that group, communicating with that group, and so we're going to come up with 10 to 15 names on these wall charts of all these different key people in the school community and the outside community, the business community, and that'll be, let's say, 150 people we're going to end up with. We're then going to ask different people to contact those individuals to see if they would be interested in going to the next level and becoming part of the next team. But at any way, the whole meeting lasts about 90 minutes. That lead team only meets once. We're trying to come up with 100, 150 people that are the center, the heart, really know Sylvania, the schools, and the community as well. We'll invite those other people then to become part of the management team.
I should have said, if you have questions as we go along, please ask them, or you can wait until the end. Any questions so far? All right. So let's talk about the management team. The management team will follow the meeting Dave talked about, where we will invite 100 to 150 people. Not all will show up, so we'll have 100 to 120 people perhaps, and we will do an orientation similar to this conversation about their strategic planning process and invite them to participate as members of the management team. We'll end up with 20, 30, I think North Royalton, we had about 50 people. And they will oversee the process from the end of September, I forget the date. September 21st. Oversee the process throughout the entire length of the planning, which will end in about April or so. They will have certain responsibilities. For example, we will ask them to meet with small groups in their homes, in their churches, at the coffee house, wherever they can gather together about 10 people and have conversation about a list of questions we'll give them. What do you really like about Sylvania schools? What concerns you about Sylvania schools? Any recommendations and so forth? And we'll be asking not only those small groups of people, but Dave and I will be at the same time conducting focus groups with the Board of Education, with staff members, certified and classified staff members, with students, with community groups, asking the same questions, trying to collect a lot of data and information around which decisions will ultimately be made. So let's talk about needs assessment.
We will try to find, through a needs assessment, information about the district. We already talked a little bit about the small groups that may have meetings in their homes or have coffees. We will provide a set of about 6 different questions that every focus group, every small group will ask the same 6 questions. So it's not just a wandering here and a wandering there, but strengths of the district, concerns of the district, and those types of things. And so we'll have those kinds of meetings. Paul and I will come into the district and one of our other colleagues and conduct focus groups within the business community, within the school community. We'll come up and spend a whole day and we may talk to 6 or 8 different community groups and school groups. We're then going to also gather all your state test scores, any data we can get for past history of the school districts, achievements, and things of that nature, so that we can get all kinds of statistical analysis of what is going on. We'll talk to key leaders in the district, find out what their concerns are, what they like about the school district. And if you've done any surveys in the past, even if it's 5 years ago or whenever you may have done a survey, we're going to try and find any hard data that we can put together as we look at the needs of the district and how we focus on those.
Then, once we've completed that, it's time to begin synthesizing all of that information and data and putting it together in a one-day retreat. We used to do this in 2 full days, but it became very difficult for board members, administrators, community members, business people to devote 2 full days of working on this. So we've condensed part of the process into a one-day retreat, very long, starting at 8, ending at 4 or 5. But at that one-day retreat, we deal with issues like, what are your core beliefs? What are your core values around which everything should operate in this district? Board meetings should operate around some set of values, some belief structure that needs to be reviewed every board meeting you have, some component of those values. Next, the mission statement. Mission statement is, what do we really do here? Next, the vision statement. I'll talk about these in a little bit more depth in a moment. We will take a look at the internal forces and the external forces acting upon this school district. And there are many external forces these days acting upon school districts, as you have experienced in the past 2 years. We'll take a look at the synthesized information and data we've been collecting from all of those things Dave talked about. We'll identify needs, and we'll leave the day with a few written goals. A few. 3, 4, 5, 6. One district had 7 goals. We thought that was a few too many, but that's what they wanted. So that's the one-day retreat. So in that one-day retreat, we're going to talk about beliefs and core values. Ritz-Carlton, which is a model I use, has 11 basics, they call them, I believe. They had 21, reduced them to 11, but that's how the Ritz-Carlton functions. One of those beliefs, I recall, says, we will never lose a customer. What does that mean? For the Ritz-Carlton never to lose a customer. They give an example. For example, pro basketball teams that come into Cleveland stay at the Ritz-Carlton. They're the only ones who can afford to stay there. Perhaps I couldn't. But they stay at the Ritz-Carlton. After one of the teams stayed there, left, the assistant coach from the other visiting team called back and said, I left the book I was reading on the nightstand in the room where I was staying. The person who receives the complaint, receives the issue, has to deal with it at the Ritz-Carlton. So that person called the person who cleans the room and said, in room whatever, there was a book on the nightstand. The person said, I kind of remember seeing a book. What happened to it? Well, I threw it in the trash. The person who received the complaint went to the trash dumpster outside, dug through all of the plastic bags, found the book, drove it to the airport, and handed it to the assistant coach. That's how they live that belief they have, and that's so important. Vision.
Yeah, the beliefs that at the Ritz-Carlton, and Paul and I talk about this all the time. Every day at the start of a shift, they get all the workers together that are coming on from 3 to 11 or whatever it is, and they say, today we're going to discuss this core belief. And every day they go over that and they talk about it and how they can institute it, what it means to them. And so the next day they'll come in, they'll be dealing with a different one. So that's how important these basics are as you're building a foundation and going up. The next thing we like to focus on then is a vision. What does a vision mean? Well, the best example I can think of a vision happened before you all were born, but I remember it very well. President Kennedy, back in the early 60s, came to the podium at a nationwide meeting and said, I want us by the end of this decade to put a man on the moon and return he or she safely to the earth. That's a vision he had out there. He didn't say how it was going to be done. He didn't. That was his vision. Now it's up to all of the rest of the people to implement it. And they did. And they did. But it's like if you're going to take a trip and you don't know where you're going, how do you even know if you're on the right road? How do you even know where you're going? To have a vision. For example, one of the districts we work with wrote a vision statement. By the year 2025, this school district will be in the top 5 in the county based on state test score, and they spelled out what it would be based on test scores, attendance, and graduation rates, or whatever it is. That was their vision by 2025. Now the rest of the planning goes into how do we get from here to there? And so vision is important. If you don't know where you're going or where you want to be, it's really hard to tell if you get there, if you don't, or if you're on some side road heading in the wrong direction. So that's the second thing we're going to work on.
A vision, very simply, is defined as a mental picture of the future. Where do we want to be in 5 years or 10 years? One community I'm aware of in New England said, here's where we want to be in 100 years. And community people say, well, that's stupid, I won't be here in 100 years. But they began to put together plans that would create what they were defining for that community in 100 years. Another component we'll be dealing with is a mission statement. A mission statement is very succinctly defined as, here's what we do here. If I were a business, I would say we make nuts and bolts. That's what we do. One school district in the Cleveland area said we create educational entrepreneurs. What do we really do here at Sylvania City Schools? Okay, let's look at action planning, and Dave is the expert on action planning.
Once we go through the retreat process, at the end of the day, we'll have our 5 or 6 goals. This is really what we need to focus on right now. We will leave that day, and we will set up an action team for each goal. And we'll ask the superintendent and her cabinet to help put the chairs in place for those different committees. And the action teams will consist of community members, consist of school members, business leaders. And as an example, in one district, finance was a real concern. So the treasurer was put in charge of the action plan committee. And that person went and got an assistant treasurer, and then they searched the community for people. They found a real key banker who had children in the school. They found a financial planner. They found people who deal with finances on a regular basis. Several of the district people were interested in the school finances and school law dealing with finance. So you will put together an action team for that particular goal. Then I will come up and I'll meet with each of the action team leaders, and we'll go through an action team training. This is what you need to do as you're putting your team together. This is who to look for. These are some of the qualifications. These are some of the plans for the future. So we will do action team leader training. Then the action team leaders will start to work, start putting their teams together, and throughout the rest of the process, I'll come up probably monthly, sit down with the action teams or the action team leaders. How are things going? What difficulties are you finding? How are things going? But each of those action teams is going to have deadlines. They're going to set up a schedule of this has to happen first, this has to happen second, third, fourth, all the way down. It's going to be a very specific document. And as these action teams are planning, and throughout this process, we'd like to ask the Board of Education to, at each board meeting, perhaps devote a small segment just to strategic planning. Where are we? Maybe have a committee come in. Can you give us an update? Is something we want to keep alive throughout the process. I'll ask the building administrators at each of your meetings, as strategic planning's development, how does it impact our school? What kinds of things do we need to do differently to help meet these needs? It's an inborn kind of a thing that people just, after a while, it's just usually, we've had community members come into a board meeting and raise their hand and say, I haven't heard anything about strategic planning tonight. And the board's president, that's coming up down under comments. So it's something we want the community to be aware of, the staff to be aware of. This is a living process that goes on. We have districts we worked with 7 or 8 years ago that still have strategic planning as part of their board agenda, their building level agenda. I mean, it's just something that keeps on going. So the action teams are really the key, and they will develop a finalized action plan for their specific goal.
Once that is completed, then we will ask the superintendent to put together a State of the Schools meeting. You may already have such a meeting, but if you don't, we would like to share this process, this document, draft document, with the community, with staff members, even with some students, where hopefully we'll have this room full of individuals, break into small groups, take a look at that draft document, looking at the vision, the mission, the goals, the action teams, the timelines, the responsibilities, the resources needed, the evaluation procedures, and make some suggestions then back to the management team about potential changes. The management team will then take a look at it, make the changes necessary, and then present it to the Board of Education for final adoption. So the next steps. After that, then the document is presented to the entire community in beautifully printed form. And then the real work begins. Then the implementation begins either this next summer of 2022, or early fall. Implementation will begin for this 5-year or 7-year or so process. So that informs us where we are now, and would like to entertain any questions you may have. Or has Dave done such a great job? Yes, go ahead.
So earlier in the presentation, there was a slide, I think, that went through like the different steps. Where are we at today?
Okay, right here. We are prior to the infrastructure. We're meeting with the lead team on
September 21st.
September 21st-ish, thereabouts. Okay. That will be the first part of the infrastructure meeting, followed by the management team, the second component of infrastructure. So we're prior to infrastructure right now. Okay. Other questions?
Does Dr. Motley have these slides?
Yes, I do.
You
I think you
should.
sent them to me before. Yes,
Okay.
I
Share
do.
it with us?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great if you could do that.
Well, thank you so much. It's our pleasure to be joining you in this journey, and we'll be talking more throughout the course of this school year about where we are, how we are progressing, what we're doing, and ultimately we'll be back with you for ultimate approval in the spring of 2022.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk it up in the community, and we'll hopefully get hundreds of people involved in the process, and it's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
The microphone. We're going to move the podium real quick,
We
since
can
I know.
use Tim's microphone.
Yeah, we can just switch out Tim's
Yeah.
microphone. Turn this one on real quick. Bro, you get two microphones.
What's that?
You get two. Oh, yeah, you can actually, that'll go.
Oh, yeah, it'll definitely.
Yeah.
Is it hung up?
Thank you.
This is the first opportunity for public participation for items which are on our agenda. None for on our agenda? Okay. Then with that, we are with you, Ms. Shanks.
Thank you. I would like to ask the board to approve on a consent agenda basis items 5.1 to 5.4. 5.1 are the minutes of the July 13th special board meeting. All members were present. 5.2 is the treasurer's report for the month ending July 31st, 2021. Item 5.3, the availability of funds for then and now invoices in excess of $3,000. And 5.4, authorization and confirmation of advances. And 5.5 is the consent agenda measure.
Thank you. I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 5.1 through 5.4.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
The next item is 5.6, and those are the minutes of the July 19th, 2021 regular meeting. Tammy Lavalette was absent.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Abstain.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
And the final item is 5.7, minutes of the July 28th, 2021 meeting, special meeting. Ruslan Slutsky was absent.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Abstain.
Julie Hoffman?
Yes. Okay, with that, we are back with you, Dr. Motley.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. I recommend item 6.1, acceptance of gifts for approval. We had a donation of a Lecky Squiggles chair from the Hay family to our special education department.
That is a great name.
It is, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
awesome.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you very much to the Hay family. Ms. Shanks?
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.2, the Administrator's Handbook for the 21-22 school year. I recommend it for approval.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.3, the approval of the exempt employee handbook.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.4, an agreement with Salient Health LLC to provide speech and language pathology work for some of our students that have special needs.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Thank you. I am pleased to bring item 6.5, an OPSI collective bargaining agreement for board approval. This agreement is a 3-year agreement, and we definitely recommend approval for this particular bargaining agreement.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? I'd pick one. Who do
Who's
you want?
second?
It doesn't matter. Kim.
Okay, we'll do Kim.
Any comments or questions?
Good job, way to go.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
So please.
Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to human resources, I recommend on a consent agenda basis that we approve items 7.1 through 7.12. 7.1 is for a licensed substitute teacher rate. We have increased the rate to $115 per day for the 21-22 school year. Item 7.2, I am recommending athletic volunteers for the upcoming school year, girls tennis and volleyball. Item 7.3, I recommend approval for various supplemental positions for the upcoming school year as well. Item 7.4, I recommend approval of a change in status from the May 24th board report for Benjamin Steele, our football co-assistant coach. I recommend item 7.5, which is a list of several licensed substitute teachers who will be working in Sylvania schools this year upon approval. Item 7.6, I also recommend approval. It is a resignation of a licensed substitute teacher. Item 7.7, I recommend the approval of 2 unpaid leaves of absences. Item 7.8, another exciting event. We have a esports MOU in collaboration with the Sylvania Education Association. I recommend approval of item 7.8. I also recommend approval of item 7.9, where we have a few new teachers joining our Sylvania Schools family from Lourdes University and the University of Toledo. I recommend for approval item 7.10, which is for license extra duty pay. I recommend item 7.11 for licensed homebound tutors, which several are listed. I also recommend item 7.12, which is the employment of a psychologist intern, and that is Kayla Beckrow. And item 7.13, again, is the consent agenda approval action.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 7.1 through 7.12.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to human resources classified personnel. On a consent agenda basis, I recommend approval of 8.1 through 8.7. 8.1 is classified personnel action. It is a correction from a previous board agenda. 8.2, I recommend approval. We have several personnel who are changing positions within the district or a combination of positions. I recommend approval for item 8.3, which is classified retirements. Barb Lundgren, who has been with our district for 20 years, will be retiring in October, I think effective October 1st. And then we have Christine Strahan, or Strahan, I apologize if I mispronounced her name. She's been with us for 12 years within the district, and although we recognize their service and we're sorry to see them go, we absolutely understand they're embarking on another journey of their life. So thank you for your service to our families and our students and our staff. Also, I have item 8.4, which is a few classified resignations, also recommended for approval. I recommend item 8.5, which are a variety of classified new hires as district substitutes. Item 8.6, I recommend approval for classified additional hours. These were for individuals who participated in our convocation or kickoff for the school year, and several other meetings during the workday that day that otherwise they would not pay for, but to show the dedication, get paid for, but showing their dedication, we have employees who came and wanted to be a part of the kickoff of the school year and opening staff meetings. Also, item 8.7, we are recommending a approval of Sue Passion, who's going to serve as a substitute in the treasurer's department. Even though has left us, she will be coming back. And again, item 8.8, a consent agenda approval for items 8.1 through 8.7.
I'll move for approval items 8.1 to 8.7 on a consent agenda basis.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Ruslan Slutsky.
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin.
Yes.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes. Okay, this time, board committee reports. Kim, anything?
Communication, you should have all gotten information on the logo rework that we're looking at, and we're still disseminating that and we're at the point of getting public comment. So that is where we are on that.
Okay. Greg? Anything?
Nothing.
Tammy, anything?
Just the Sylvania Provincial Lions Golf outing is this Friday. Is it too late to sign up, do you think?
I think I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I do know we'll be there at the sign-up
We will
table
be there.
at like 7 in the morning.
And Greg is golfing.
We'll check you in. 7 in the morning. Okay, Ruslan, anything?
Nothing.
Nothing? Yeah, I don't think I have anything other than Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder at Northview they knocked it out of the park. It was fantastic. I think you went too. Right?
I did. I went Sunday, and I know the Borton family. Owen Borton was the
kid who played all the
kids.
roles.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was just amazing. So.
Yeah, very funny. Very good. Okay, and with that, we are at public participation for items not on our agenda. I believe there are some, so as I call you up, if you could just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes to address us. And first up is Nicole Cassidy.
Hello, my name is Nicole Cassidy. Address is 4806 South Crest Ridge Road, Toledo 43623. If I run a little over 3 minutes, I'm reading a parent statement in addition to my own. I just wanted to give you a heads up because several parents last meeting who were on the opposite side got to speak a lot longer than 3 minutes. Thank you. This is a letter from a concerned parent, Aaron Jackson, who could not be here. His statement is, and then I will also email this to everyone, including the school board and Dr. Motley. On August 13th, the Sylvania School Board announced that masks would not be required in our schools, but strongly recommended. Since then, Lucas County has been labeled an area of high community transmission due to our rapidly increasing case numbers. Other area school districts are changing their mask rules to fit this reality, and Governor DeWine had us pleaded with schools to require masks, joining the Lucas County Department of Health, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Ohio Department of Health, which is recommending them for all unvaccinated, which would include children under the age of 12. The Sylvania School District and School Board needs to begin to follow their own policies and precedents and not allow the personal beliefs of district families to potentially disrupt our classrooms. It is time to require masks in our schools. According to the Sylvania School Board's own policies, members should remember that their first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of all students attending the public schools, and render all decisions based on the available facts and their independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups, as reflected in the Code of Ethics, Code of Conduct, Code Policy Number PO 123. In failing to accept the recommendations of all constituents involved with community and school district health, the district is failing to meet both of these aspects of its own code. Further, if we look at the policy on controlling communicable diseases, policy states that the Board of Education recognizes that control of the spread of communicable disease through casual contact is essential to the well-being of the school community and to the efficient district operation. In order to protect the health and safety of all students, district personnel, and the community at large, the board shall follow all state statutes and health Health Department regulations which pertain to immunization and other means for controlling communicable disease spread through normal interaction in the school setting. Reference PO 8450. If everyone from our children's doctors to the governor is imploring us to universally wear masks to protect our schools, how can we justify continuing to only to recommend masks? Perhaps one could argue that because neither the state or county have set forth mandates, we are following this policy. However, both the governor and county have been handcuffed legislatively when it comes to mandates. Yet the intent of their appeal is obvious and should be followed. If we read further into our own district policies, it specifically mentions masks and how we do not need a mandate for them. Quote, during times of elevated communicable disease community spread, pandemic or epidemic, the superintendent will issue periodic guidance through the Board of Education plans/resolutions in alignment with public health officials and or in accordance with government edicts and including any pandemic plan developed by the district's pandemic response team under policy number 8420.01. School settings can be a source of community spread. Wearing face mask coverings is especially important during these times and can help mitigate the risk of exposure from person to person. Policy Order 8450-1. This policy specifically states that the district will align with public health officials during a pandemic. It states the district knows how important masks are, but at this time we are not following that guidance. Yes, there are many families in the district who do not agree that masks are necessary. The board is obligated to listen to all of its constituents, but are expected to use independence when it comes to implementing their own policies. In debates and discussions on classroom mask wearings, those who believe like me are told if we don't like the current policy, we can leave. Sala is always an option, we are told. However, I agree with the governor, the AAP, the CDC, and the district's own words that it is best for our kids to be back in school and a need for more in-class instruction and socialization. Those words come from the Phase 2 reopening plan sent out in December of 2020. This same document discussed how the district was using research-based information to make the case that it was safe to go back into the classrooms. The district recognized that while it could not follow all mitigation strategies, such as social distancing, to protect students, it would take as many steps as necessary to increase the safety of our students and staff. As our country's trend or surpass the criteria that would have put us on a hybrid schedule last year, what has changed? The science is still the same, but most of the mitigation strategies are now unused, especially masks. If it was unsafe last year, why is it safer this year? It is not the science, policies, or precedent that should move the board. Then perhaps consider the disruption that a student not wearing a mask can cause in the classroom. We now have students who are choosing to wear masks, doing the same thing they were asked to do all last school year when in the building, in order to protect each other and themselves. Again, these are the students who are being told that if you do not like this policy, then leave. Never mind the fact that the set deadline for Sala was 1 week before the decision to not require a mask was made, or that parents had a reasonable expectation that the district would continue to follow its own policies and precedents. No, these students are being told if they do not like the potential distractions, then leave. Name any other time in our schools when we would tell students doing absolutely nothing wrong that they should leave the classroom. Now consider the students not wearing masks. They themselves are not a potential distraction, but their lack of a mask is. Based on the district's own quarantine isolation policy, a student wearing a mask will have to quarantine if they are near a student who tests positive for COVID. Again, a student who is doing what was asked of them last year can have their own education disrupted for anywhere from 10 days to however long a potential infection lasts. This very much refutes the idea that one family's decision to not wear a mask only affects that student. Why would the district allow for such potential disruptions? It goes against policy, precedent, the appeals of everyone concerned with community health, and good sense. Mr. Jackson's youngest daughter, who is not eligible to be vaccinated at this point, shares a table with 3 students. 2 of those students choose not to wear a mask. If one of these students tests positive for COVID, my daughter could be out of the classroom for weeks. I know that this is an unimaginable pressure upon the superintendent and the school board in this matter. Sadly, the idea of community health has become a battle line and the fights are ugly. This is not going to change in a week or a month. Yes, families around the district have a myriad of beliefs. Sometimes that is the benefit of the district. Today, in this particular case, it is not. One family's belief should not be worth more than our own guidelines, science, and every student's chance to be in the classroom. If the district waits to require a mask, more children have the potential to become sick. More kids have the potential to have their school year disrupted. We must not wait. It is time to do what should have been done on August 13th. Sincerely, Aaron Jackson. I would just like to add, that was his statement. I would like just 2 more minutes.
Okay, well, you're already at 8 minutes.
I understand. I'm asking for 2 more minutes. My daughter has now missed 5 days of school because she has an immune disorder. So I have not sent her to school because the other kids are not wearing masks. So she's not getting an education. She is not getting speech therapy. She is not getting intervention services. She asks me every day when she sees the kids in the neighborhood get on the bus, Mommy, she has autism too. Why can't I go to school? And I have to explain to her, we're trying to protect you because the school district is not protecting you because they only care about the interests of a few students and not her. So we're real close to just pulling her out and sending her back to a Catholic school where they seem to actually give a damn. So thank you.
Emily Spielis? Spielis.
That's okay. It's tricky.
I just couldn't tell if that was an L or an I.
I thought for like the first 3 months that I dated my husband that it was Spiles, so.
There you go. Just your name and your address.
I'm Emily Spielis, and my address is 5732 Phillips Avenue, Sylvania, Ohio, 43560. And I'm sorry I have to be here again tonight. I'm going to reiterate a lot of the same things that were already said, but I'll try to keep it really brief. My plea is really simple. Please make masks mandatory for Sylvania schools, at least on a temporary basis. You have the authority to make policies that affect the health and safety of our entire community. It's not a choice that should be about one's freedom or personal choice. Masking is a decision that can affect the overall well-being of our community and the education of all of our Sylvania school students. To reiterate a few points that I made last time, there's an overwhelming majority of the scientific and medical community that are recommending masks for students and want a universal masking protocol. We have local guidance for COVID protocols in schools, which include facial coverings, and we have issued guidance on quarantining that are affected by whether there is universal masking or not. Local businesses and schools are taking these changes seriously and returning to facial coverings. I work for the Andersons, and as of a couple weeks ago, we all have to wear masks again when we're up from our desks. And it sucks, but it's what you gotta do to protect others. And our own country is still not adequately vaccinated, even though Sylvania is above average, we're just not isolated. Part of your reasoning for optional masking was the success of the summer swing program, and last week was the first week back in the regular school year with staggered starts for many of our schools and students. And we're already seeing an increased amount of COVID cases and quarantines, as Dr. Motley shared with us earlier. The dashboard release is a welcome addition to your COVID communication, but it should also include how this relates to the decision-making and what thresholds are deemed acceptable before changes will be made. Thus far, my plea has been for the good of everyone attending schools. Others have argued for their personal choice. The quarantine policy includes guidelines which show increased chances for quarantining if the positive case is not wearing a mask, even if the contact is. Simply put, choices made by others directly impact other students' ability to learn safely and in person. I would hope you agree as educational professionals that missing up to 2 weeks of school that could have been prevented is detrimental to any student's learning. Your statement on Friday also states that in alignment with local, state, and national health agencies, Sylvania schools continue to strongly recommend that students and staff wear masks while indoors. You say this while you know full well that local, state, and national health agencies have begged and pleaded to make masks mandatory. Please follow the guidance of the medical experts and prevent unnecessary illness and loss of education. And finally, we have the obligation to protect our students, teachers, and community. Wearing a facial covering is such a simple and small ask. We need to work together to ensure that we have as many students as possible learning in person at their public school. As educators and leaders, please take the steps necessary to keep students safe and learning. As parents, we need to step up and make sure our kids understand that as a citizen and member of a community, it is our responsibility to take care of those around you. And that's all that I have tonight. I just, please, please, please take this seriously, and I hope that you make the right decision to protect everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Pollard?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jen Pollard, 3906 Harrowsfield Road, Sylvania, Ohio 43560. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts on masking in schools. I recognize that this is a decision that must weigh heavily on you. I'm sure you're really stressed and really tired. And I don't envy your position, and I appreciate you being here and giving us an opportunity to speak. So I am speaking tonight to implore you to follow the recommendations of the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Lucas County Health Department, and require masks in our schools. I would like to talk about the data specific to Lucas County. In June of this year, there were 209 cases. In July, there were 303. From August 1st to August 20th, there have been 807. That is an increase of 286% from June to August, and that's mid-August, not even the end of August. From July 20th to August 2nd, there are 27 pediatric cases reported in Lucas County. From August 3rd to August 16th, there have been 115. That is a 325% increase in pediatric cases in our area in 31 days. The transmission rate in Lucas County is now high, and that data indicates there's a reason for that. In the email from the superintendent dated August 13th, he stated, in consultation with the Board of Education, we will continue to respond to the data. Today's decision is subject to change based on school and/or community health conditions. If we see that data causes concern, we'll act quickly to modify our strategies, to adapt and adjust, and to make sure we take appropriate steps. The data cannot be more clear. Cases are rising. Pediatric cases are rising. 2 days into the school year, we have cases in every building. Our children are at a demonstrably higher risk of getting COVID due to the Delta variant. The data is unmistakable. In that same email, you stated, it should be noted that our decision mirrors the approach of the majority of our neighboring school districts who share similar case counts and vaccination rates, as well as private schools in similar districts across Ohio. Now, Maumee, Ottawa Hills, Toledo Public, Toledo School for the Arts, and Oregon have required masks. Sylvania should be a leader, not a follower in those decisions. We do not want to be the last district who chooses to protect our kids. I am imploring you to follow the data and follow the recommendations of scientists, epidemiologists, and doctors. I'm imploring you to follow the data. I'm sure there are loud voices in opposition to these facts, but facts don't care about our opinions, and the facts could not be more clear. My greatest fear is that we will choose to listen to the loud voices instead of the science, and a child or teacher will die because we didn't make the decision demanded of us by the facts. Please don't let that happen. To close, based on the recommendations from trusted sources, and especially the recommendation of our own local health department, as well as the data that shows an indisputable increase in both cases and specifically pediatric cases, I have to believe that making the decision to require masks for all children and adults would be an easy decision. I know it's not an easy decision, and truthfully, the only logically and ethically sound decision. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and briefly, I'd like to say, I know we're receiving a lot of emails. I don't know about my colleagues. I think I speak for everybody when I say we're reading them all. We all have full-time jobs and families. It's impossible to answer them all, but I just want everybody to know we are reading every word and we are listening. So, thank you. And with that, does anybody have anything else? Okay, with that, I move we go into executive session for the purpose of compensation of a public official, public employee. We will not be taking action following. So moved.
Second.
Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Craig Feller?
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Bruce Lynn-Slutsky?
Yes.